The suburbs, safe, quiet, predictable. Rows of houses, neat lawns, children on bikes, white fences and blooming hydrangeas, a perfect illusion. But under the surface darkness lurked, a secret whispered from neighbour to neighbour. The smiling man was watching. He was more than a man. He was a nightmare in a pleasant disguise, a creature that fed on fear. His smile was the opposite of friendly. It was a promise of something wicked, and it was coming for them. It started with whispers, strange stories at backyard barbecues, a glimpse of a figure in the park, a man, tall and thin, dressed in ordinary clothes. But his face, it was never fully seen, always obscured by shadows, always with that terrifying grin. Children told tales of seeing him in windows. Their parents dismissed it as childish imagination, but the fear remained, a seed planted in the fertile ground of their minds. The smiling man was real. They could feel it. Sarah lived on Elm Street, a young woman starting her life. One night she was walking home alone. Streetlights flickered, casting long shadows. Then she saw him, standing under a street lamp, smiling. She froze. He took a step towards her, his grin widening. Terror flooded her veins. She ran. He didn't chase her. He didn't need to. He had already won. He had planted the seed of fear, and it was growing. More sightings followed. A man fitting his description peering into car windows. Footprints in freshly watered gardens. The smell of lavender, his calling card, lingering in the air. The police were called, but there was never enough evidence. Just fleeting glimpses. And that unsettling smile. People were afraid to leave their homes at night. The once vibrant community became a ghost town after dark. The smiling man had taken their sense of security. He had replaced it with primal fear. Section 5. The Law and the Legend. The police scoffed at the stories. Just a prankster, they said, nothing to worry about. But the residents knew better. They had seen the look in his eyes, the cold, calculating stare behind the smile. He was toying with them. The legend of the smiling man grew with each passing day, fueled by fear and uncertainty. He became a part of the fabric of their lives, a constant threat, lurking in the shadows, always watching, always smiling. Section 6. A Night of Vigilance. A group of teenagers decided to take matters into their own hands. They had heard the stories, the whispers in the hallways, the warnings from their parents, but they were determined to uncover the truth for themselves. The legend of the smiling man had haunted their small town for years, and they were tired of living in fear. Armed with flashlights and walkie-talkies, they set out to find the smiling man. They had spent weeks planning this night, gathering supplies and mapping out their route. Each of them had a role to play, and they were confident that their teamwork would keep them safe. They moved quietly through the darkened streets, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. They were young and foolish. Their determination was fueled by a mix of curiosity and bravado, a desire to prove themselves to each other and to the world. They believed that they could handle whatever came their way, that their youth and energy would be enough to protect them. But they were naive, unaware of the true danger that lurked in the darkness. They didn't understand the danger they were in. The stories they had heard were just that, stories. They had never seen the smiling man for themselves, never experienced the terror that he brought with him. As they walked deeper into the night, their confidence began to waver. The reality of their situation started to sink in, and fear crept into their hearts. He wasn't a man to be trifled with. The smiling man was more than just a legend. He was a real and present danger. Those who had encountered him and lived to tell the tale spoke of his eerie smile, his cold, calculating eyes, and the sense of dread that followed him wherever he went. He was a predator, and they were his prey. They walked the streets, their hearts pounding in their chests. Every step they took seemed to echo in the silence, amplifying their fear. They clutched their flashlights tightly, the beams of light cutting through the darkness, but offering little comfort. The walkie-talkies crackled with static, a constant reminder of their isolation. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of a branch sent shivers down their spines. The night was alive with sounds, each one a potential threat. They jumped at every noise, their imaginations running wild with visions of the smiling man lurking just out of sight. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of fear. They were hunting a monster, but they didn't realize that the monster was hunting them. The smiling man was always one step ahead, watching their every move. He knew the streets better than they did, knew how to blend into the shadows and strike when they least expected it. The teenagers were out of their depth, and the realization was beginning to dawn on them. But they didn't realize that the monster was hunting them. As they ventured further into the night, the sense of dread grew stronger. They could feel eyes on them, could sense the presence of something malevolent. The smiling man was close, and he was waiting for the perfect moment to reveal himself. The teenagers' bravery was turning into desperation, their determination into panic. They had set out to confront a legend, but they were about to become part of it. Section 7. Glimpses in the dark. They saw him several times that night. The air was thick with tension, and every rustle of leaves seemed to echo louder than usual. The moonlight cast eerie shadows, making it difficult to distinguish between reality and imagination, or thought they did. A fleeting figure in the distance, it was as if he was playing a game, appearing just long enough to be seen, then vanishing into the darkness. The fog added to the mystery, swirling around like a living entity, hiding and revealing the figure in a cruel dance. A face pressed against a window, always that smile. It was a smile that sent chills down their spines, a smile that seemed to promise something sinister. The face would appear for just a moment, then disappear, leaving them questioning their sanity. It was like he wanted to be seen, like he enjoyed their terror. The more they saw him, the more they felt his presence, as if he was feeding off their fear. His grin was not one of joy, but of malice, a twisted pleasure in their growing dread. Their bravery began to waver. Doubt crept in. They had started the night with a sense of determination, but now uncertainty gnawed at their resolve. Each sighting chipped away at their courage, leaving them more vulnerable to the darkness around them. Were they chasing shadows? Was the smiling man just a figment of their collective imagination? The questions haunted them, making them second-guess every decision. The line between reality and illusion blurred, and they wondered if they were losing their minds. They were about to give up when they saw him again. This time he was closer, more tangible. The shock of seeing him so near jolted them out of their doubts. It was a moment of clarity amidst the chaos, a confirmation that they were not imagining things. This time there was no mistaking it. The smiling man was real, and he was right in front of them. His presence was undeniable, and the fear that gripped them was all too real. They knew they had to confront him, but the question was, how? The night was far from over, and the true test of their courage was just beginning. Section 8. The Price of Belief. He was standing in the middle of the road, bathed in the pale light of a street lamp. The night was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath. The figure under the street lamp seemed almost otherworldly, a ghostly presence in the stillness of the night. His smile was wider than ever, stretching across his face in a way that seemed to defy the natural order of things. It was a smile that held no warmth, no joy, only a chilling sense of malevolence. The kind of smile that sends shivers down your spine and makes your blood run cold. He raised his hand, beckoning them closer. It was a slow, deliberate gesture, as if he knew that they were watching, and he wanted to draw them in, to make them come to him. There was something hypnotic about the way he moved, something that made it hard to look away, even though every instinct screamed to run. One of the teenagers screamed, a high-pitched, terrified sound that shattered the silence of the night. It was a scream born of pure, unadulterated fear, the kind of fear that grips you and won't let go, the kind of fear that makes you feel like you're drowning, like you can't breathe. The others froze, paralyzed by fear. They stood there, rooted to the spot, unable to move, unable to think. Their minds were blank, their bodies numb. They could only stare, wide-eyed and trembling, at the figure under the street lamp. They turned and ran, their fear giving them speed. They didn't look back, didn't stop to see if he was following. They just ran as fast as they could, their hearts pounding in their chests, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. They ran like their lives depended on it, because in that moment they truly believed that they did. They didn't stop running until they reached the safety of their homes. They burst through the doors, panting and terrified, their faces pale and their eyes wide with fear. They slammed the doors shut behind them, as if that could keep the terror at bay, as if that could keep the smiling man out. They had seen the smiling man. They had looked into his eyes, seen the darkness that lurked there, felt the chill of his smile. They had come face to face with something that defied explanation, something that shouldn't exist, something that belonged in nightmares, not in the real world. And they had lived to tell the tale. They huddled together, their bodies shaking, their minds reeling. They were relieved to be alive, but the relief was tinged with a lingering fear, a fear that they couldn't shake, a fear that would stay with them long after the night was over. But they would never be the same. The encounter had changed them, left a mark on their souls. They would carry the memory of that night with them, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurks in the world, a reminder that sometimes the things we fear the most are all too real. Section 9. A Haunting Grin. The smiling man was never caught. He continued to haunt the suburbs, a constant reminder that even in paradise evil can lurk. He became a cautionary tale, a story parents told their children to keep them in line, but the fear remained. The knowledge that he was still out there, watching, waiting, smiling. He was more than a man. He was an idea, a symbol of the darkness that hides in plain sight. Section 10, he's still out there. The suburbs were never the same. The fear lingered, a palpable presence in the air. The smiling man had won. He had taken their sense of security and replaced it with a gnawing dread. They would never forget him. He was a part of them now. A terrifying reminder that evil can wear a smile. He's still out there, somewhere in the shadows, waiting, watching, smiling.